Rumors are circulating that Russia's planning another mobilization in the spring, and it will likely rely heavily on conscription as Vladimir Putin continues his quest to conquer Ukraine. So middle-class Russian citizens of fighting age could find themselves facing the battlefield with only a few weeks of training. At least they'll be armed with the latest and best gear, right?
Hey troops, welcome back to the channel. My name's Ryan, I'm a former commando from the United Kingdom, and today we're going to be reacting to why Russia is giving its soldiers fake gear. So, keeping up with the theme of Ukraine and Russia at this moment in time, Infographics did a video a few weeks ago talking specifically about the equipment, kit and equipment that Russian soldiers have been using on the battlefield. And to be honest with you, when we were doing these updates, there's been talks of getting fake kit and equipment like months and months and months ago. So although this video is quite up to date, the story is quite old, okay, in terms of, you know, Russia giving their kit and equipment, giving them fake kit and equipment. We've even seen on some of the tanks fake body armor and stuff being used on them, like cardboard and things. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the take is from Infographics guys. So before we get into it, please like, share and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Really does help me out. I have a lot of good news coming your way, but all I can say at this moment in time is I have been signed. I will be fighting on an influencer event pretty soon, okay? So I'm in training right now. I'm getting myself all squared away. I can't wait to release the full information on it when I'm allowed to. And yeah, it's going to be really, really exciting, guys. If you want to see updates on that boxing journey specifically, please consider joining the Patreon below. That's where I'll be putting updates on there, okay, guys, as well as ad-free, uncensored content. I'm really trying to push Patreon at the moment because it's the greatest contingency I can have as a YouTuber, all right? And it gives you guys something extra as well. So anyway, let's get straight to the video, troops. Thanks for being here. Let's get into it.
Rumors are circulating that Russia's planning another mobilization in the spring, and it will likely rely heavily on conscription as Vladimir Putin continues his quest to conquer Ukraine. So middle-class Russian citizens of fighting age could find themselves facing the battlefield with only a few weeks of training. At least they'll be armed with the latest and best gear, right? Guess again. When the war began, most pundits looked on in horror but predicted Kyiv would fall within days or weeks. After all, Russia was a great power with the world's largest nuclear arsenal and had been chopping off pieces of Ukraine like Crimea for years with minimal opposition. Ukraine also had an untested military and wasn't a member of NATO or the EU yet. But as the first days of the war passed, Ukrainian defenders put up a strong enough initial fight.
I wouldn't say untested exactly. Maybe it's untested in its conventional way, i.e., you know, Britain has always been involved in wars, actively speaking, for hundreds of years, all right? We haven't really had a break, same as America. Ukraine, not so much. They've had their fair crack at the whip, so to speak, in terms of pulling the trigger, so they're experienced in that regard. Maybe it's not in the conventional way, but still, they are experienced.
That aiding in its defense began looking like both a moral imperative and a good investment to NATO. This is when the war turned into a drawn-out battle between Russia and a NATO-backed Ukraine that has kept Russia confined to only the eastern part of Ukraine that it conquered at the start of the war. And that's put Russia in a tight spot. Russia's military plans were geared toward a quick, brutal war and an extended occupation which the world would be powerless to oppose. But instead, they felt the full brunt of international condemnation. And not only did Ukraine get massive investments from the world, but most powerful countries outside of China, North Korea, and Iran sanctioned Russia and cut them off from a large part of the world economy. And so Russia saw itself isolated as a Cold War stockpile of weapons and supplies started running out.
So, was the world right to sanction Russia in the way they did? Was the world right to, so to speak, gang up on them in condemnation of what they were doing in Ukraine? I want to hear your thoughts, guys, because at the end of the day, your thoughts in the comments really gives me an accurate depiction of what the people are thinking, because it's okay listening and watching stuff such as mainstream and things like that, but you know, public opinion really does matter in this, because sometimes it can be very, very different to the narrative of what we're getting. I might be gauging it wrong as well, so if you can let me know what you truly think with the whole situation, I would really, really take time out to read those comments, trust me.
with little in the way of options for replenishing them. And rumors started spreading quickly that things were going downhill. As early as May, reports were going around that the Russian standard body armor was not up to snuff. The Security Service of Ukraine leaked conversations between a Russian soldier and his mother, where the soldier asked his mother for money to buy better protective armor. While Russia had provided its soldiers armor during this stage of the war, most Russian gear is from the Cold War, and odds are that its quality has degraded over the decades.
Now, is it crazy to suggest that military personnel will be calling home to get better kit and equipment for them to use in war? No, it's not. It happens all the time in wars, okay? Even some of the conventional, more thorough equipped militaries like to purchase their own kit. I was part of the United Kingdom's finest, the Royal Marines Commandos. Was there times in which I bought my own kit? Yes, there was. There was quite a few times, actually, because, for instance, the boots that we got issued with were crap when I first joined the military. It has since gotten a lot better, though. But in that gap of when it wasn't, I actually bought my own boots because they were better for me to use. Yes, I was allowed to wear them. I bought my own weapon. I bought my own, loads of things, Bergens, everything. And really, you shouldn't be. Certainly not in Britain. And certainly not, some of the better forces as well. You should be equipped with the best. So don't be too surprised that Russia is actually calling home, and trying to get body armor. Granted, that would be a massive problem for the UK. It's not that bad, i.e. getting body armor and stuff. You're provided with all of that kind of stuff. But some things, yeah, it's not uncommon, guys, to be able to buy your own stuff, trust me.
Russia's been tight-lipped since the war about the casualties they've suffered, and they've denied reports that they're running out of supplies, claiming the leaked conversations are Ukrainian propaganda. But the evidence is piling up. As the war dragged on, photos were leaked of Russian soldiers who had been killed in combat, and few, if any, seemed to be wearing heavy-duty body armor. As early as March, military experts predicted that Russia would start to run out of key supplies. But it didn't deter Putin from pushing on with the war. And then came October, and the first mobilization, which included a mass conscription of soldiers, including many from ethnic minority enclaves who felt they were being disproportionately targeted for service. It wasn't long before the initiative was perceived as a disaster, with people protesting against conscription while their family and friends were being sent to the front unprepared for combat. And the supply problem soon became very clear. The trickle of complaints about poor armor and other supplies soon turned into a flood, as phone calls from mobilized soldiers revealed they were being given civilian clothing, rusted guns, and little in the way of supplies like first aid kits. Many were being forced to resort to buying their own armor and gear, looting it from Ukrainian villages, or stealing it, sometimes from fellow soldiers.
Yeah, again, this might seem quite shocking to the viewer who has no experience of the military, but it's not too shocking for me to hear this, okay? It's something that you do hear going on, certainly even in the better military groups, like I've mentioned before. It happens with certain elements of the kit and equipment that we utilize. So when you're talking about a country like Russia, yeah, this stuff is going to be commonplace, okay, guys? It's nothing to be too alarmed about. It is alarming, but it's not uncommon. It's not surprising me. It's probably not going to surprise anyone in the chat who served in the military either,
What equipment they did have was often in poor condition, forcing the conscripts to DIY most of the fixes needed for their guns and uniforms.
Yeah, I've done that myself. That's pretty much every soldier will have done that in their time, fixing some of their kit and equipment. You haven't got a tailor in the field who can just fix your stuff for you. You've got to be able to be adaptable to situations where your kit's going to get ruined, and you got to be able to get the sometimes needle and thread out to repair it. That's just common sense, really.
Even recruitment offices knew there was a problem, as many soldiers were being told to bring their own gear prior to reporting for duty. And the good gear didn't come cheap. Most families reported spending a month's salary on the gear a draftee would need to go into combat, with most families knowing there was a good chance the gear and the man wearing it would not come back. As more and more men were drafted, many stores experienced shortages of supplies and gear, a military version of the great toilet paper wars of 2020. And sure enough, some people took advantage, as there were reports of price gouging. Some key items like bulletproof vests saw prices rise exponentially, and other gear like sleeping bags and winter boots went out of stock quickly. But in some cases, getting nothing might be the better alternative. Many Russian soldiers are reporting that they're getting body armor, but it's fake. One video that went viral had a soldier showing off his shiny new vest, only to reveal that it was an airsoft gun vest.
Yeah, airsoft gun vests. I can't say I'm surprised. Now, some of the airsoft stuff out there looks pretty damn good. Some of it is actually good, all right? Granted, it hasn't got that military grade, especially when you're talking about armor and stuff. Although I bet you somewhere, someone out there has got military grade airsoft armor. That's just going to happen, guys. You've got some of these people who are really enthusiastic with that scene, who've got some pretty amazing stuff, okay? But that's not acceptable. Getting sent body armor that you believe to be, you know, the legitimate stuff, the real I am, and in fact it turns out to be fake. That's a different kettle of fish. I'd personally rather be issued with nothing than my hierarchy issue me with something that's fake, because what it's going to do is it's going to put you into this false sense of security. You might charge that person that you weren't going to charge before, that enemy position that you might not have done before if you'd known that that body armor was fake, because at the end of the day, that stuff's designed to, you know, in some cases, stop bullets from killing you. So if you haven't got that, it's that little bit of security, that peace of mind that you wouldn't have had anyway, okay? So, you know, it's going to change your mindset on the battle space, on the battleground. So that's wrong. That's wrong on so many levels, troops.
Designed for playing games of paintball. It would shred in an instant if confronted with actual heavy fire, as he described in colorful language.
Вот, выдали нам сегодня супер бронежилеты, страйкбольные, защищают от пневматики и собираются посылать на Украину.
He was also apparently given airsoft gun scopes, so Putin might be making up for the supply shortage by raiding the local arcade. But in some cases, the armor might be actively dangerous to the soldiers. Russia's been boasting that it has top-of-the-line body armor, the Ratnik 2, and it's been stockpiling them since 2017. In fact, by 2020, Russia claimed it had enough to supply the entire army. This modern body armor is ideal for protection against both low-velocity bullets and shrapnel, and also features ceramic plate inserts that can protect vital organs from high-velocity bullets. If Russian soldiers were wearing this, it would make the job of Ukrainian snipers much harder. So,
you know, this is stuff that I've took for granted. It's like everyone had body armor. It's not a matter of, oh, you might, you know, hopefully one day we can all get body armor. No, everyone had body armor. Granted, our boots might not have been up to standard of, you know, some of the walking boots that you can get, which make your feet a little bit more comfortable, but everyone had body armor. There was no shortage of that stuff. This is crazy to me. You can't have a military and attack countries, do this kind of shit, and not provide your soldiers with basic equipment such as body armor. It's baffling. What's going on in his head?
So what is protecting the average Russian soldier? Most soldiers are currently being seen wearing older 6B23 body armor that was replaced by the Ratnik model. And it has one big problem. It's not very good at protecting its user. Soldiers who are hit by bullets while wearing it often sustain blunt force trauma, causing painful bruises and even broken ribs, which kind of defeats the purpose of body armor. Yet other soldiers are inspecting their armor and finding previous bullet holes in it, indicating it was previously used and it didn't exactly get the job done, which makes many people wonder, where is this revolutionary Russian body armor? Well, Russia is notoriously corrupt, and many people higher up in the military seem to only be in it for themselves. There were multiple scandals in the years up to the war where military officials were convicted of selling supplies online, with the black market only heating up when the war kicked off. So maybe some soldiers did wind up with the armor they needed, but only because they or their families were willing to pay for it. And
That's
combining
terrible.
the stolen body armor with the ones that were destroyed in the early days of the war, Russia found itself unable to supply its troops with adequate body armor. And that led to an elaborate game of deception. Why does Putin care about pretending that soldiers are wearing body armor, and up to including giving them fake armor designed for airsoft? Part of it is his international reputation. Not like he has much left to begin with, but he would rather be feared than liked. While Russia is isolated by international sanctions, the governments of NATO and beyond have been hesitant to push him too far. This includes not giving Ukraine any long-range offensive weapons that could be used to target Russia itself. The weaker Russia looks and the more bare bones its army seems to be, the less hesitant governments will be to defy Russia's government. But appearances also matter when trying to impress the few allies you have. Putin's choice of suppliers is limited. Many of the small countries he has in his corner, including fellow dictatorships Belarus, Syria, and Venezuela, don't have much in the way of resources to offer. China, while by far the most resource-rich country in Putin's corner, has been inching away from full support of the war in recent months, and will only become more hesitant if it looks like Russia is losing.
Yeah, I think they are becoming more hesitant as time has progressed since this video, which is obviously a good thing for the rest of us, okay? But in terms of the mindset behind him wanting to be perceived as a dictator who is giving his soldiers the best kit and equipment, he is really, really stupid to think that, well, one, we're not going to find out that they're not issued with the best kit and equipment, and two, why would he have that much arrogance to believe that we would think that way anyway, i.e., you know, we're going to perceive him as that, oh, look, he's got all of his soldiers' body armor. Well, yeah, this is kind of like a basic right in the military. You got soldiers, you provide them with protective equipment. So I think he's got a strange self-image about himself. He really does, you know, hold himself very, very differently. I mean, if you think about how isolated he is now in the world, politically, even if he just stepped away from politics, he's an extremely isolated individual now. He's not going to be able to enjoy the fruits of his labor, so to speak, on a global stage anymore. It's just really end times for him, isn't it? Like we normally see with dictators of old, when they start doing stuff like this, acting like this, it's normally game over for them. Either they self-terminate or they get terminated, you know. Either way, it seems to be coming close to that, I think, really.
And while Iran and North Korea are very eager to help Russia against US-backed forces in Ukraine, they're not going to throw money into what they think is a losing fight. So Russia's determined to present itself as a strong nation, but a bigger problem might come from within. Currently, the winter months mean both Russia and Ukraine's armies have been frozen in place, fighting over small swaths of land in eastern Ukraine. Most of these areas were taken by Russia in the first days of war. Then many were reclaimed by Ukraine during their stunning autumn offensive in 2022. Now, small towns like Soledar have become fierce battlegrounds, but Putin is far from willing to settle for what he has. Rumors are he's planning a massive mobilization for spring, with the hopes of making one last push to take Kyiv. And to do that, he needs the public on board. In recent months, Putin has tried putting on a friendlier face to the people of Russia, meeting with war widows and mothers of fallen soldiers.
I love infographics, man.
And sharing his grief over their losses. But now he's going to ask countless more soldiers to face the same fate, and resistance is likely to be fierce. Putin isn't generally vulnerable to public opinion, often putting down anti-war rallies with brutal force. But this might be different. If the Russian people feel they're being used as cannon fodder in a doomed war, then the public could fully turn against the war.
Haven't we already got to that point, though, where Russia is kind of, you know, turned against the way Putin's doing things and handling things? Haven't they already getting to that point? I've worked with a number of Russians in a military sense and non-military sense, and they're not stupid people, okay? Normally war tries to demonize like the civilian populace of the land of whoever's invading a country. They do it on purpose to kind of, you know, dehumanize them a little bit, make them look stupid, all of that kind of stuff. But don't believe the hype, guys. Russian people are just like you and me, very, 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 very decent people, all right, generally speaking. Very intelligent, no different really. They speak a different language, but that's it. All right, these indifferences are very small and few between. But I think they have to have woken up to this. You know, granted, the propaganda that's getting spewed out into the country will be affecting their mindset slightly, but you can't tell me that they don't know that what's going on in Ukraine is wrong, and you know they're getting sent there without the proper kit and equipment. The families of their loved ones will be grieving just like me and you. It's not as if that isn't going to happen, or, you know, or magically, or these people don't grieve the deaths of their sons that have been killed at war. Of course they do. All right, the normal people. So I think they are clocking onto it quicker than we think, troops. You know, I really do.
And no war could be prosecuted with the public staunchly opposed to it. And if the soldiers themselves oppose it, all bets are off. Desertions and draft dodging has become more common in the last year, with some soldiers preferring to be taken captive by Ukrainians rather than fight to their deaths.
Yeah, but they're also under the threat of being killed, executed on sight for doing that as well. There's a number of cases and videos out there what we've seen of that actually happening, okay? If you want to see stuff like that, then my ad-free uncensored content on Patreon is the place to go for that, troops, unfortunately.
Being sent to combat without an armor vest would likely only intensify the feeling, which is why Russia might be hoping the soldiers who are putting on their fake body armor don't look too closely and charge into combat for Mother Russia. After all, the soldiers will eventually find out that their body armor is fake, but it'll likely be too late for them to do anything about it. In the end, Russia was simply not prepared to fight a war of this scale. In the months leading up to the war, top military analysts and businessmen in Russia advised Putin on his next moves, planning the tactics for a limited military engagement. Unsurprisingly, they were all shocked when he invaded the country in full force. Russia burned through its stockpiles, was cut off from supplies from the rest of the world, and is currently feeling the squeeze. The government is trying to crack down on hoarding and price gouging, ordering anti-monopoly agencies to keep an eye on military supplies. But at the end of the day, it's up to the soldiers to gear themselves up so they don't die. While the average Russian might be a little more...
Absolutely horrendous, that. Absolutely horrendous. It's up to the soldiers to gear themselves up so they don't die. Might have been selling the story a little bit short in terms of the Royal Marines when I was in, you know, buying boots and stuff. That's a luxury, all right? At least we were provided with them, every single one of us. 2 pairs, all right? Really robust, uncomfortable boots. Better than nothing, though, all right, troops? And they did do the job. They did the business. They did what they were intended to do, which was give you blisters, all right? But, yeah, this is not very nice, okay?
More ambivalent about the war than they were at the start, the idea of soldiers in harm's way is a universal human motivator, and Russian citizens are pitching in to buy body armor and winter clothing. Families often hold fundraisers, hoping to give their boys a fighting chance of coming home alive.
Terrible.
But while in the past Putin's gambit to hide the lack of body armor might have worked, today the internet allows word to travel around the world in minutes, which means that Russian soldiers will likely be looking at every piece of gear a lot more closely. Want to know more about the state of the war?
Okay, troops, that's all she wrote. Infographics, why Russia is giving its soldiers fake gear. Obviously, because they probably haven't got the money that they say they have. And yeah, the Russian military, generically speaking, is just pretty shambolic, all right? Not impressed in many, many ways. This is one way in which the infographics show is helping showcase just how incompetent the Russian military is. But both sides are suffering. Deaths on both sides is happening. And I just hate this whole war, all right? It's one of the most pointless wars going, guys. If you can give me a good reason why this is happening, let me know in the comments. But other than that, wherever you are, stay safe and have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching, guys. I really do appreciate you. If you haven't subscribed, click that button, man. All right? Take it easy. Bye-bye.